Hello and welcome back to the Motorsport MSBaithak podcast. I'm your host Didi, and joining me today once again is my friend and your co-host Vedant. On this episode, we'll be talking about F1's latest announcement that it will be going racing in Las Vegas from 2023 to 2025 at least. So let's grab some chai, take our seats, ready our opinions, and dive right into the conversation. Hello Vedant, F1 is once again headed to Las Vegas. Not to the Caesars parking lot, but to the strip in Las Vegas. Definitely huge news. They announced a 3-year contract, Saturday night race with a 1 a.m. Eastern time start for the fans in the US. So it'll be 10 p.m. local time, which is interesting in itself, which is almost like basically an hour or two before the Oz GP starts, usually here in the US. And interestingly enough, F1 and Liberty Media are the promoters for this event. However, let's get into your views. What do you think about this event? How do you feel about 3 races in the United States? And what has your reaction been to this announcement?
Well, ever since the Las Vegas Grand Prix rumors were coming along, I have I have been very vocal and very opposed to it as such. But I think, as all things Formula One and Liberty Media, I have come to accept it and just live with it and trying to find the positives in it, because like it's not affecting me as such. It's just giving me potentially good racing and more racing, and the drivers seem happy to be racing in Las Vegas and to be racing along the strip. So yeah, I mean, I think for me it's a mixed bag sort of thing, but then again, it can be a really big positive for Formula One in general.
Yeah, but would you like to go into why you thought it was not a great idea when it was announced, and when the rumors were coming along that Las Vegas GP might be actually a thing?
Well, first of all, Vegas Grand Prix obviously had to be a destination race, like the Miami Grand Prix is. So I think that was one of my biggest concerns, because I don't know if this is true or not, but from what I've heard and read, that the basic prices of Miami Grand Prix, the basic ticket prices of Miami Grand Prix were way higher than any other race, or the base price of any other race. So I think it may end up alienating the casual fans. As such, it may end up alienating the fans and just appeal to the a certain category of spectators and certain category of fans. So that was one of my biggest concerns, because we know Las Vegas at that peak time of the year, basically, and with it can be a certain crowd. I don't know a lot about that, but yeah. But I think, secondly, of course, 3 races in one country was my biggest concern. But then again, as a lot of people on the internet pointed out, that don't look at it as 3 races in one country, but look at it as 3 races in 3 different regions of the world, because all these 3 races are about 1,300 to 1,500 miles away from each other. And if you look at Europe, you have 3 races within 500 kilometers of each other. So in that regard, I think I've come to accept it, and yeah, I guess I'm happy with it now. Basically, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm no longer angry with Formula One management.
Yeah. Even my knee-jerk reaction was, that okay, why are we, concentrating on the US so much? Why do we have 3 races here? But I gave it a little bit of thought after the announcement, and then I tuned into Marshall Pruitt's Racing Family Spaces, and I gained a fresh perspective, and I'll share it here with you. But you talked about the fact that look at it like 3 races in 3 different regions of the world. I think that's a very basic way to tell yourself that it's okay if the US has 3 races because
Yeah.
the Europe is very small and things like that. But I don't think that's really an argument that you have to make for that. But you brought up a good point that the races in Vegas and Miami might be a little too expensive um, for the F1 fan who wants to go but just can't do it because of his budget, his or her budget. But I think given the interest we saw in Miami GP that got sold out during the pre-sale basically, I don't think F1 will be facing that issue in the next few years. Maybe 7-8 years down the line, when things are not on a crescendo as much, when things are not blowing up as much, F1 might have to tackle that issue of bringing the prices down, making it a little more affordable. But it seems as long as quota is there, fans can go there. I think even quota prices went up a little bit this year compared to last year. So clearly, as long as the interest is there, the prices will be high, and as long as F1 can bring people to the races, it's not going to be an issue for them. The promoters will continue to raise money. F1 will continue to benefit from it, and it'll continue to be the way it is. But let me give you my point of view on this whole Las Vegas GP and F1's goal to grow in America, to really capture the American audience. Now, the way I look at it is, what is F1 up against? What are the things F1 has done or can do to capture the US audience? And what are some other interesting points, surrounding this issue? So let's understand what F1's goal is and what it is up against. So F1's goal is obviously to grow the US audience to as large, if not larger, than what NASCAR and IndyCar have at the moment, right? So IndyCar and
Of
NASCAR
course.
are solely American series, right? They have 17 races and 36 races each throughout the year. And NASCAR has a race basically every weekend.
Yeah.
They have races, they race more weekends than anyone else, like any other series in the world. So you have over 50 races between these two series, right? So, and we saw from the viewing figures of the previous couple weekends, that NASCAR viewers were about 8 million in the US or something like that, something outrageous, compared to F1 and IndyCar. So clearly, F1's goal is to be bigger than everyone else, even in America. And then the second thing is that IndyCar and NASCAR are easy to enjoy for the casual motorsport fan due to the intensity of racing action on track, whereas F1 is not, right? Like if you and I want to just enjoy a little bit of racing, we can either show up to the track or tune in on TV, and we can get a good bunch of action on track, and you enjoy the racing, have a little bit of fun, and then switch off, right? We don't have to tune into every
Yeah.
race. We don't have to tune into all the storylines. We don't have to peel back all the layers that you need to do to essentially enjoy F1, just because those storylines and those strategies and everything happening off track makes it so much more interesting to actually view the action on track. And obviously things might change in the future with the new regulations, but that has not been the case in the last few years. So having understood what F1 is up against, we need to understand what has F1 done so far. So F1's biggest weapon to grow the audience in the US has been Drive to Survive. Now, what does Drive to Survive do? Drive to Survive basically is a storytelling platform, right? It's a storytelling platform for F1 to help peel back the layers and get all these storylines closer to the new fan, right? It bridges. So like, if I'm a new fan, if I want to enter F1 and enjoy it, it'll take a lot of time for me to understand all these storylines by myself, who these characters are, who these drivers are, who these team principals are, why their dynamic is like this, what is the history of these teams. What Drive to Survive has done is basically accelerated that process in a 10 episode season every
Yep.
year for the new fan, and brought them closer to all the storylines to allow that new F1 fan to enjoy the racing on track and be able to follow the storylines without much effort. So it's really made it easy for a new fan to come into F1, and that is absolutely essential for F1 to do that. Like I said before, because F1 is not just a sport that goes racing. There's a lot more that happens behind the scenes. So Drive to Survive has done that. Now, what is the next thing you need to do in America to get those eyeballs onto F1? Now, obviously, F1 can't have 17, 20 races in the US. It is a global sport. It has to travel the world. So what can you do? So in order to keep its year-long presence, now you'll see, the Miami GP is early in the year. It's the sixth GP, fifth
Yeah.
or sixth
Yeah.
GP of the year. And then we have Kota, which is towards the end, but still in the middle of the season after the summer break. And then the Las Vegas GP, given its rumored timeline, will be probably the second or third last race of the
Yeah.
season. So if you look at that this way, F1 and Liberty Media are keeping the American audience interested in F1 throughout the year by organizing a Grand Prix at crucial moments of the season. It's not like F1 is coming once in the season to America and then going away, letting people follow them there. And the second aspect is, like you pointed out, this might be an issue, but it's really not. And that is a carnival-like execution of these Grand Prix. Now, I believe the carnival-like execution of these Grand Prix is absolutely essential, so that because the fact is F1 is not just trying to capture the racing enthusiast in America. F1 is trying to capture everyone's attention, And if they do this, if they go to Vegas, if they shut down the strip,
Yeah.
for 3 whole days,
Yeah,
that will grab everyone's attention in America.
obviously.
If F1 makes a pool in inland Miami, to put some yachts in there, that will grab everyone's attention. If F1 can be the headline news for 5 days, for a week on every news outlet in America, that will grab eyeballs, which is why it is so essential to make it an event for everyone, right? Whether that is having a concert, having a whatever parade, the team principals parade. So make it an event for everyone, for the racing, for the hardcore racing fan, for the enthusiast who just wants to have a good time in Miami or Vegas, for the music fan who wants to go enjoy an Ed Sheeran concert in Kota, whatever that might be. Make it an event for everyone, which is why I think it is absolutely essential that it is carnival like in this. Now, something that we have talked about in the past and especially recently has been about Andretti's involvement, and that Andretti should be given, an entry into F1. And obviously I feel that would help F1 to rally a nation based on a driver or team, like an American driver or team. But we've seen Haas, right? And yes, you can say that Haas hasn't been a very American team per se, given the fact that it is run by a European person, not the owner, but Gunther
Yes.
Steiner. He's from Europe, and their drivers haven't been American at all. But I just don't think it is necessary for F1 success, because F1, especially in the recent past, for most fans, who have started following F1, let's say from the turbo hybrid era, or even for those who have been following from, like, the bronze GP era and things like that, uh, an American team or an American driver has never been an integral part of this, right? So yes, it will create an impact. Yes, it will draw the racing enthusiasts, Colton Herter fans or Andretti fans, IndyCar fans, maybe to F1. But that is not just the audience that F1 is going for, and that audience, like we saw, is just as much as the audience that follows F1 right now. So it's not really a huge chunk, which is why I feel having that more GPs, those 3 GPs across the season, will be absolutely essential. And I think F1 doing this themselves, like I said, F1 and Liberty Media are promoters for this event themselves, means a lot. We have already seen so much more content coming out for, like, let's say, the Vegas GP compared to what we saw for Saudi Arabia a year ago, right? Because even though that was a new race, we didn't see so much content. There was no hype, nothing at all. Whereas we'll see this throughout the year of we'll see this throughout the year as to this build up to the Vegas Grand Prix. Especially if the season is great, it's going to add more to it, and it's going to draw even more fans to that particular Grand Prix. So I think that is a very convincing case, at least in my head, and a more holistic case for F1 to go racing in Las Vegas and have 2 or 3 races in the US every year. But I won't be surprised if F1 chooses to scale back to 2 races after 3 to 5 years, choosing between Las Vegas and Kota, or Las Vegas over Kota, in the coming seasons, based on what the teams agree on, because as we know, we only have 24 races that are allowed in the Concord Agreement at the moment, and that will have to go away. So, the teams won't just agree to more races. There'll be the biggest issue will obviously be budget cap. The bigger teams will ask for more money and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And some other interesting points around this is, like I said, F1 is not trying to capture the imagination of just the American racing fans. It's trying to appeal to everyone, and that is what Drive to Survive did. I think if you listen to Chris Medlin's podcast somewhere, I don't remember where, but Chris Medlin said that, when Drive to Survive approached him for the first season, or something like that, they said that, this should appeal to the surfer in California who flicks on his Netflix account,
Yeah.
at 10 in the morning after having his coffee and surf. And if it appeals to him, it'll appeal to everyone across the states, basically. So that is one thing. And the second thing is F1 has not involved any of the American racing organizations at all in its endeavor, which means that F1 is trying to be independent, and it's trying to go racing on its own. And the third thing is that I learned on Marshall Pruitt's Racing Family Spaces, Twitter Spaces, was IndyCar had tried to organize a race in Las Vegas a few years ago, but it fell through and never came to fruition, which just goes to show how much more of an effort F1 has probably had to put in to make this a reality, and what kind of impact or potential the partners in Las Vegas, whether that's the hotels, the municipal corporation, I guess, all of these guys are seeing in F1, and the growth that it can provide for for Las Vegas, even though Las Vegas is already such a popular tourist destination.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the key to the Las Vegas and the Miami Grand Prix as well, but especially the Las Vegas, given the that F1 themselves and Liberty Media promoting Las Vegas Grand Prix is that uh, Liberty Media are an American company. They know, like, obviously, they would want F1 to grow in America, only not only because they're an American company, because there's a lot of potential. USA, America is a sport-loving nation. We all know that, right? And to have a global sport, it have its prominence is very important. But I think the fact that they are an American-based company, they are they know the industry, they know the space very well, right? So like we from Asia or the entire F1 paddock, the majority of the fans in Europe can call it whatever they want, but the owners of Formula One right now know exactly what the American fans want and how they can get this product to the American potential fans. So I think that makes a very good, that is an important aspect of what is going on here. And even I just kind of clicked on it while you were talking. So yeah, it's
Yeah, and fans in Europe and not Middle East, but like European fans have been complaining that hey, this is crazy, and then they've been pointing out that it'll be a really bad start time even for the people on the east coast of the US. But it's not really about the
yeah.
European fans. It's about F1 going racing in America. It's about the American fans, and those who want to tune in will tune into such a huge event. It's gonna be insane. And obviously, when I tuned into the racing spaces on for Marshall Pruett's Racing Family Spaces on Twitter, I had the opportunity to ask a question, and seeing how big this event is supposed to be, the question that I had was, is can Vegas potentially host the season finale at some point when Abu Dhabi's contract runs out? But obviously, that won't be the case because F1 is the promoter here, but F1 gets an insane amount of money to just go racing in Abu Dhabi without having to put up any money for themselves, which Chris Medlin pointed out, pretty easily. So yeah, but it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. But let's talk about the little things now. What do you think of the track itself,
Yeah,
Vedant?
well, that's where it gets disappointing, right? Because even though we are racing on the strip and that long stretch is going to be very spectacular when you look at it, but the track is not inspiring. The track is not inspiring to I don't know, a racing, the racing mind that I have. We have seen, like, it's sort of a box, it's sort of a stroll around the Las Vegas area, around the casinos basically. So I don't know. It may produce good racing because there's not a lot of corners, the stupid corners like in Saudi Arabia. But yeah, I don't like the track too much.
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple elements of the track that I'm not a big fan of. It's like the 90-degree corners. I feel there is enough space around those streets that they could put a bigger
Yeah,
radius corner basically to allow for medium speed corners rather than slow corners, and that weird tail-like section at the end of sector one, basically that slows down the cars in that
yeah,
parking lot. That weird section. Not a big fan of that, and that chicane in the first corner. But if I were to change anything, I would go racing the other way. So right now I think we're going anti-clockwise. I would go racing
yeah,
clockwise around the track. That is something that I would change, but definitely better than any other track we've seen
yeah,
in Vegas before. So let's see how it pans out.
yeah,
Let's see what
absolutely.
happens. But yeah. But I think the bigger conversation after this has been, the next target for F1 is to have a second race in China. Right now, obviously, we are waiting for China to return next season. Um, and then I guess after that F1 will try to step in another race once things go back to normal in China for F1 basically. But the bigger question is with only 24 races allowed in the Concord agreement at the moment, which will go away next season or the season
Yeah,
after.
that's absolutely the biggest concern because right now we have 22. Right, we had 23 this season, but Russia went away. So 22, and with China and Vegas joining next year, that leaves us, and Qatar also joining next year. That leaves one Grand Prix to move away, and Spa and France both are running out of their contracts after this season. And I think Monaco has a special deal with Formula One, but that deal has also changed, as pointed out on by the race that now Monaco also has to pay Formula One. Earlier they did
Yeah.
not. So I think, of course, Spa. I think Spa. Personally, I don't think Spa should go away. France can go away because it is not inspiring good racing. It is like, of course, the 2021 race was brilliant, but overall, when you look at it, the first race in France, the first race in France when they came back in 2018 was filled with logistical problems for the fans, and there was tons of traffic jams and whatnot. And Monaco, we all know, is a very very bad track for the current generation of cars. So, and this conversation has been going on for 2 3 years now that Monaco should go away. And yeah, I think France and Monaco are the biggest targets to drop. But if you talk about 2023 specifically, I think France will be the first one to go.
Yeah, I won't be surprised. Yeah, it'll be heartbreaking to see Spa go away. We've always loved that circuit, but that circuit also has its own logistical problems, like
Yeah,
we have learned. It's not close to anything. It doesn't provide the best fan experience. Yes, it provides great racing, and fans love it because of that and because of the setting. But it's not really doing a lot from, I guess, from F1's perspective, or adding value to it anymore, as much as it used to. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Anything else, Vedant, before we close out this podcast on F1's return to Las Vegas in
yeah. I mean,
2023?
I think in the end, when Stefano Domenicali said that we have interest from 30 races, we have interest for at least 30 races. It was, the interest might be there. The interest might be there for 35 or 40 different promoters, basically. But I think in the end, it was a huge power move from Formula One side, because when you look at Spa and the mistakes and the fiasco at Spa-Francorchamps last year, Spa-Francorchamps would want to create a renewed experience like what we have at Kota, like currently, and like what we are going to have at Miami and Las Vegas and things like that. So I think, we have interest from 30, 35 odd people, and you can only incorporate 24. Out of those 24, there are a handful of them who, even though they won't provide good racing or good experiences, but they provide good money, so they'll stay. And then there's the experienced ones which may not provide good racing, and they'll stay. So I think right now it's up to the European tracks, the old guard of Formula One, basically, to step up to create something that Formula One can take into the future. Because we saw what happened at Germany. Formula One, like, Germany has the most world drivers championships in Formula One, and all the motorsport success that Germany has and legacy that Germany has, but we don't have its race in Germany. So, and I think it's up to the old European guard to step up and make their prominence, and prove that they can change the way Formula One wants them to, and they need to stay on top of it.
Yep, it's all about capitalizing on the hype for F1 right now. If you're on a crescendo, if you're on the way up, just capitalize as long as you can, and then once you get up there, try to hold steady as long as you can. But as always, Zidan, it's been a pleasure talking to you about F1 here, and we'll catch you on the next one.